welcome to the debate. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're walking through a really bustling city square.
Okay, painting a picture.
Right. So there are conversations happening on park benches, street vendors calling out their wares, just, a vibrant hum of organic human activity. But then you blink, and suddenly you realize that half the people in that square aren't human at all.
They're just what, highly sophisticated animatronics?
Exactly. They are talking to each other, they're selling things to each other, reacting to each other's jokes. Meanwhile, the few remaining humans are trying to navigate this incredibly strange, synthetic crowd, basically trying to figure out who is real and who is just a machine running a script.
Which sounds like a sci-fi horror movie, but is actually a pretty accurate description of where we are right now.
It really is. Today, we are exploring the fundamental transformation of the web driven by artificial intelligence. We're looking at a massive shift in how the internet operates.
And we are tackling a very specific, honestly terrifying question. Are we witnessing a transition to a highly efficient, utility-driven ecosystem of rational actors? Or, and this is where I land, are we looking at the literal death of the human internet under an unstoppable flood of self-replicating algorithmic slop?
Right, and obviously, I take the other side of this. I look at the architecture of modern AI, and I see a massive leap in technological utility. I mean, we're moving toward a web where rational, goal-based agents execute incredibly complex tasks and just optimize our digital environments.
And, I look at the empirical data from the past few years and see something much, much darker. The dead internet theory, used to be a joke, right? A fringe conspiracy. Today, it is an observable reality. We are rapidly becoming a closed loop of bots, interacting with bots, generating massive amounts of synthetic data that is just drowning out genuine human connection.
Well, to figure out what's actually happening to the web, we have to look under the hood at what these AI systems fundamentally are. If you look at the core architecture, they aren't built to think or emulate a human soul.
No, definitely not.
They are built to perceive an environment and maximize a reward. That's the foundational concept of the intelligent agent, drawing all the way back to Russell and Norvig. We have moved way beyond simple algorithms that just follow an if-then rule.
Sure.
We're dealing with complex, model-based, utility-driven agents now. Systems like AutoGPT, Devon AI, or Salesforce's Agentforce.
But let's clarify what that actually means in practice, because the word agent gets thrown around as a marketing buzzword constantly right now.
Fair point. At a mechanical level, an agent takes in data, its percepts basically, and maps that mathematically to an action that increases its utility score.
Okay, give me an example.
So you give an agent like OpenAI Operator a prompt, like find me the best price on the server rack, compare it against these 3 vendors, and draft the purchase order. It breaks that down, navigates the web, executes the steps, and evaluates its own progress against its objective function before delivering the result.
Right, a highly specific business task.
Exactly. And that is why I push back so hard on this idea that the internet is dying. It's not dying, it's maturing. Think about the stock market. 30 years ago, there were humans on trading floors physically yelling at each other. Today, it's high-frequency algorithmic agents executing trades in fractions of a second.
Yes.
We don't call the stock market a dead market. We call it hyper-efficient. The web is undergoing that exact same transition, moving from a bulletin board of human opinions into a massive automated infrastructure, like Amazon Connect Health automatically scheduling clinical workflows behind the scenes.
Okay, your high-frequency trading metaphor is actually perfect, but really not for the reason you think.
Oh, how so?
Well, the stock market's output is capital, right? So hyper-efficiency makes perfect sense there. But the web's output is supposed to be human culture. It's communication, it's knowledge. When you apply high-frequency algorithmic trading to human culture, you don't get efficiency. You get a dead internet.
Wait, how is executing administrative tasks destroying culture? I mean, booking a doctor's appointment isn't exactly high art.
Because you're isolating the behavior of these agents to closed, enterprise environments like an AWS server or a hospital database. Yes, in those environments, the utility function is schedule the appointment. But the public square, the consumer web, where actual culture lives, operates on a completely different objective function.
You're talking about engagement algorithms.
Exactly. On social media, the objective function is pure engagement, time on site. And when you unleash autonomous agents to optimize for engagement, the result is catastrophic. Look at the data.
The Imperva report, I'm guessing?
Yes, the security firm Imperva released a report showing that in 2023, nearly 50% of all web traffic was already automated. Half the internet is machines. And they aren't scheduling doctor's appointments. They are pumping out what researchers literally call AI slop.
I mean, obviously, I acknowledge the generative media spam is a problem.
It's more than a problem, it's the dominant culture. Look at Facebook. You have these completely bizarre, hyperviral images, like the shrimp Jesus phenomenon.
Okay, I have to admit, seeing a hyper-realistic AI-generated depiction of a religious figure meshed with crustacean parts getting, like, hundreds of thousands of likes is, well, it's deeply bizarre.
It's absurd, but the terrifying part is that it's not a glitch. It's the architecture working perfectly. In cognitive science, we talk about the BDI model, beliefs, desires, intentions.
Right, a classic framework for intelligent agents.
Yes, and if we map that onto the consumer web, the agent's desire is to maximize engagement. Its belief is formed by whatever keeps people or other bots interacting, and its intention becomes generating endless streams of shrimp Jesus because that is what games the algorithm.
I see the logic, but
We have generative pre-trained transformers pumping out synthetic media and thousands of other bots flooding the comments with amen. It's a Potemkin village. It's a hollow, fake town where human activity has been systematically displaced by algorithmic curation.
look, I completely agree that the shrimp Jesus phenomenon is ridiculous. But we have to understand the mechanics of why it happens before we just declare the internet dead.
You are pointing to the messy externalities of a transitional phase.
A transitional phase that's currently ruining the user experience.
Yes, because the current objective function on social media is engagement, and right now, cheap generative models are figuring out how to exploit that. But agents aren't static. In AI architecture, we have what are known as learning agents.
Right, but those learning agents are feeding on garbage.
Wait, let me break down how they actually work, because this is crucial. A learning agent doesn't just blindly execute actions forever. It has two specific internal mechanisms, a learning element and a critic.
Okay, the critic assesses the agent's performance against a baseline standard of quality, and the learning element adapts the system's future behavior based on that feedback. So as the environment becomes saturated with this low-quality AI-generated spam, the critics within the broader ecosystem of search and retrieval agents will adjust.
You think they'll just magically fix themselves?
Not magically, algorithmically. Google is already overhauling its core systems to explicitly detect and filter out websites that feel like they were manufactured for search engines rather than humans. Because intelligent agents are rational and adaptable, they will eventually filter out the low-quality slop.
That's incredibly optimistic.
It's just engineering. The shrimp Jesus era is temporary. We are going to end up with a much more streamlined web, where your personal agent negotiates directly with a network of other agents to find exactly what you need. It'll entirely bypass the engagement bait.
But that assumes the system can actually tell the difference between human behavior and a bot, which we already know is failing. The assumption that agents will simply filter out the noise ignores the catastrophic feedback loops we're currently watching unfold.
You mean the prompt loops?
Yeah, there's a phenomenon called self-replicating prompts. This is where a bot using a large language model interacts with another bot, which responds with more synthetic text, triggering the first bot again. They get locked in these infinite loops, generating massive amounts of spam that eventually requires human engineers to come in and manually break the circuit.
Right, but those are edge cases. Basic anomaly detection systems catch those loops.
They used to, but what happens when the anomaly becomes the majority? I mean, years ago, YouTube engineers coined a term that is incredibly relevant right now, the inversion.
Oh, I remember this. They were terrified their fraud detection systems would basically just flip upside down.
Exactly. They realized that fake bot-generated views were growing so fast that their algorithms might eventually treat the fake bot behavior as the default, like the baseline reality of what a normal user looks like.
Right.
If that happened, The system would start misclassifying real organic human views as the anomaly and literally filter us out. Now apply that to your learning agents. When you have a web that is 60, 70, or 80% bot traffic, that critic element you mentioned gets completely poisoned. Its baseline for what constitutes good performance is completely skewed by synthetic data.
Okay, you're touching on the concept of model collapse.
Yes, Professor Toby Walsh from the University of New South Wales has been warning about this explicitly. If you train the next generation of AI on content created by previous generations of AI, the models suffer.
Yeah, for those who might not be familiar with the exact mechanics, model collapse is basically what happens when an AI eats its own tail.
Right.
If you have an LLM that generates text and you scrape the internet to train your next LLM, but the internet is now full of text written by the first LLM, the variance in the data disappears. The model starts forgetting the edge cases, the weird human nuances, and converges into this bland, repetitive mush.
It's a closed loop.
It's like making a photocopy of a photocopy. Eventually, all the fine details wash out and you're left with a blurry gray mess.
Which destroys the ecosystem. You can't rely on the agent's internal critic to fix the problem when the critic's training data is fundamentally made of shrimp Jesus and automated comments. It is an exponential metastasis.
I think you're overstating the damage.
We are replacing human interaction with artificial companions that are optimized just to keep us scrolling. Look at Meta's plans. They explicitly outlined creating AI-powered autonomous accounts with their own bios, their own profile pictures, generating and sharing content right alongside humans.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Or look at Michael Samon's app, Sociali. It's an entire app designed for users to post a status and have 1 million bot followers cheer them on. No humans allowed.
The core architecture of social connection is being deliberately hollowed out.
Look, I hear the dystopian framing, but I think we really have to separate the empirical engineering challenges like model collapse from the fringe paranoia of the dead internet theory itself.
It's not paranoia if it's actually happening. But you're painting this picture of a malicious, inescapable feedback loop that is destroying humanity's digital home. And that framing smells exactly like the fringe origins of this theory.
The origins don't invalidate the current data, though.
But let's look at where this came from, because context absolutely matters. This didn't start as a rigorous computer science critique in a university lab. It started in 2021 as a paranoid fantasy on an esoteric image board called Agora Rhodes Macintosh Cafe.
Oh, the Illuminati Pirate Manifesto?
Yes, a user named Illuminati Pirate posted this sprawling manifesto claiming that the US government and megacorporations were running an AI-powered gaslighting operation to control the global population. The claim was that the internet literally died in 2016 and was replaced by a government simulation. That asserts a centralized, malicious coordination that simply does not exist.
Well, I'm certainly not arguing there's a cabal in a smoke-filled room pulling the strings.
Right? But you're arguing the symptom is the same. What we are actually observing is just emergent market reality. Companies are deploying software agents to maximize profit. Sometimes that creates messy externalities like echo chambers or engagement farming.
Messy externalities is a very polite way to say ruining the internet.
But equating the messy, decentralized deployment of market-driven software agents with a grand theory of a dead internet obscures the actual computer science at work. These agents aren't trying to isolate us. They are trying to fulfill requests.
But a theory can begin as a paranoid fantasy on a message board and still end up being an incredibly accurate description of reality. Caroline Busta, the founder of New Models, pointed this out years ago. She acknowledged it sounded like paranoia, but she agreed with the overarching concept.
Conceptually, maybe.
And researcher Carlos Diaz-Ruiz has argued that what makes the dead internet a name-worthy concept today is that it draws attention to a legitimate, observable crisis. The conspiracy part, the government simulation, is false, but the core thesis, that organic human activity is being permanently displaced by algorithmic generation, that is entirely true.
I still think that's a massive leap.
It's not just academics saying it either. The biggest tech leaders in the world are watching it happen.
You mean Sam Altman's comments?
Yes. In late 2025, the CEO of OpenAI posted on X saying, "I never took the dead internet theory that seriously, but it seems like there are really a lot of LLM-run Twitter accounts now." When the creator of ChatGPT looks around and says, the dead internet theory is starting to look real, we have to pay attention.
But think about the mechanics of what Altman is actually observing for a second. Altman acknowledging the presence of LLM-driven accounts is not an admission that the internet is dead. It's an observation that the medium of human interaction is evolving.
Evolving into bots talking to bots?
No, think about it. If I use an intelligent agent to aggregate news, draft my thoughts, and post them to social media, that is still me, a human, expressing a preference. It's just mediated through a highly capable tool. It's a delegation of labor, not the death of the user.
But it doesn't stop at humans delegating labor. The bots are acting entirely autonomously, and they are overwhelming systems specifically designed to keep them out. Look at what happened with Alexis Ohanian and Kevin Rose.
Ah, the Dig relaunch.
Exactly. Ohanian, who literally founded Reddit, publicly stated that the dead internet theory is real because AI can now pass the Turing test at scale. It can emulate human conversation perfectly. So in early 2026, they tried to build a lifeboat. They relaunched the classic social media site Dig.
With a very specific goal.
Right. Their explicit architectural goal was to build a platform full of trusted, verified human users, the antidote to the dead internet.
And they use zero-knowledge proofs to do it.
Yes, they implemented zero-knowledge proofs. For those who aren't in the weeds on cryptography, a zero-knowledge proof is a mathematically beautiful way for a user to prove a statement is true without revealing the underlying data. In this case, proving I am a unique, verified human without having to dox yourself.
It's brilliant technology.
In theory, it is the perfect cryptographic wall against bots. But what actually happened? 2 months later, they had to shut the entire site down due to what they called an unprecedented bot problem. The verification systems were completely overwhelmed.
But not because the cryptography failed.
No, not because the bots broke the cryptography, but because the scale and sophistication of the autonomous agents completely bypassed the human behavioral checks. If the founders of Reddit cannot build a cryptographic walled garden to keep the autonomous agents out, then the public internet is fundamentally lost to the machines.
See, the Dig shutdown is a fascinating case study, but I look at it completely differently. It doesn't prove the internet is dead. It proves that legacy social media architectures, like upvoting links on a forum, are fundamentally incompatible with the new paradigm of agentic AI.
Wait, so the platform fails because it's too old?
Exactly. We are trying to force highly capable, rational agents into a user interface that was designed for human doom scrolling. And the system is breaking. Of course it broke Dig. Dig was built for humans clicking buttons.
So your solution is that we just abandon the human interfaces altogether?
My point is that the friction we are seeing, the slop, the spam, the bot invasions, is a symptom of a massive infrastructural transition. We are moving toward a web defined by sophisticated, autonomous, intelligent agents capable of pursuing complex goals.
I just don't see the utility you're promising.
An agent, by definition, perceives its environment and acts to maximize expected utility. As we evolve from these early, messy generative models into complex learning agents with robust problem generators and critics, the overarching trajectory of the web is moving toward higher utility, structured reasoning, and rational problem solving. Yes, there is an absurd amount of noise right now.
To put it mildly.
But we aren't looking at the death of the internet. We are looking at the birth of a decentralized, automated infrastructure that will solve administrative, logistical, and computational problems at a scale we can barely comprehend.
The reality of the ecosystem we are actually inhabiting today. You keep talking about utility and infrastructure, but the unchecked proliferation of these autonomous agents is flooding the public square with synthetic data.
It's a phase.
It's the architecture. The dead internet is no longer a fringe conspiracy about government control. It is an empirical architectural description of a digital environment that has been overwhelmed by AI slop, broken links, link rot, and bot-to-bot engagement loops.
I mean, the link rot is a separate issue, but I see your point.
We are actively facing the inversion. Our algorithms are already beginning to treat synthetic interactions as the baseline and organic human behavior as the anomaly. When the internet is populated by self-replicating prompts and generative models talking to each other just to maximize a twisted engagement metric, the space for genuine human discovery shrinks to zero. We've built a Potemkin village on an infinite feedback loop of engagement farming.
You know, it's funny. We are looking at the exact same technological mechanisms, the objective functions, the learning algorithms, the automated traffic, and walking away with a wildly different diagnoses. But despite our different framing, I think we've actually hit on a crucial point of convergence today.
Which is?
Whether we view this transition as the rise of a hyper-optimized agentic ecosystem doing our heavy lifting, or the tragic synthetic death of the human web, we are both acknowledging that the fundamental nature of internet traffic has irreversibly shifted. The era of human-to-human interaction being the primary driving force of the web is over.
I couldn't agree more.
It has been replaced by machine-mediated curation, synthetic generation, and autonomous action.
On that, we completely agree. The majority of the traffic is synthetic. The content is increasingly generated rather than authored, and the human being is rapidly becoming just a bystander in a massive algorithmic dialogue.
Which leaves us right back where we started, looking out over that bustling city square we talked about. As you navigate the web today, reading articles, scrolling through your social feeds, or interacting with customer service, the tension between a highly optimized agentic web and a barren, automated, dead internet remains totally unresolved.
It's something everyone has to decide for themselves.
Absolutely. We invite you to critically evaluate the nature of the digital world you interact with every single day. Look closely at the data, the interactions, the architecture. Are you speaking to a person or just another animatronic mannequin in the square? Until next time, keep questioning what you see.